Hello and welcome back to another episode of Niner Sports Talk. I am your host, one of your hosts, Spencer Tritt. Today, Blake couldn't make it with us, so found some guests to fill in for him. Who do we got here today, guys?
I'm Justin Bouajram, and I work for the Niner Times?
You do.
All right, I work for the Niner Times.
I'm Sujay. I also work for the Niner Times.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
They're two fellow sports writers of mine. Wanted to get some guests on this next couple weeks and decided what better time than now when Blake couldn't join us. Classic Blake. Anyway, no. We love Blake. He's going to watch this, so
Let's go.
miss you. All right, guys. So we have kind of a weird week in Niner sports, I'd say. Our basketball team has had two very, different, similar games, I would say. The game against the University of Texas San Antonio, UTSA, and the Roadrunners, and then a game last night against Tulsa in the Golden Hurricane. First and foremost, you guys, I want to ask, how do we feel about Charlotte's basketball program at this point in the season? We're getting closer to March. We're getting closer to the conference tournament. How do we feel about the direction of this team?
Do you want to start off?
Yeah, I feel deflated. I mean, we had a run during the month of January towards the end of December where this team was taking great strides when it came to their defensive discipline, what they're doing on offense. And it just sucks that you kind of lost that over time. Losing to a team like UTSA who came into the game going into like a 20-game losing streak. Yeah. And you can't lose that type of game at home as well. That's unacceptable.
I meant to pull this up earlier. I'm sorry to be on my phone during a show. I know it's not good etiquette, guys. But I don't mean to cut you off, Justin, but I wanted to share this from, if anybody follows the Gold Mine on Instagram, which is our student section page, for Sunday's game against UTSA, they gave out some fun stats, things that the fans could make fun of UTSA for, or things that, make you positive about Charlotte going into the game. They mentioned how they hadn't won a game since November. Their current record was 4-20. They'd already lost to Charlotte at that point in the season. Obviously last in the American with no wins, and that they hadn't paid their players NIL money last year, allegedly. All these fun things, and then we lose to a team like that. It's really demoralizing for a program that seemed like it was turning the right direction at this point in the year.
All I'm going to say is I didn't even know that NIL won, and I think that's great.
It definitely is an odd situation. UTSA is kind of a football stronghold in the American. I mean, they've been more consistent than a lot of the programs, including Charlotte, but basketball-wise, they have struggled. And it's not a team that, if Charlotte is serious about competing in the American Conference and competing in the American Conference tournament in a couple weeks here, they can't be losing games like this.
Well, it didn't look like they struggled against Charlotte, I'll tell you that. No. I can't remember a time where they were down.
No. It definitely was an odd game. Now, guys, before we get into the Tulsa game, I got to throw this out here. What do we think the future is for Charlotte basketball and the coaching around it? Me and Blake have often mentioned we are big fans of Aaron Fern. We like Aaron Fern's work. We like him as a coach. Thought last year the roster just wasn't quite to his, specifications. How do you feel now, coming off of, a handful of losses in a row and really just kind of a bad section of weeks for this team that looked so strong in early January?
I think you have to move on at the end of the season.
Yeah.
He had this whole summer to recruit players. He got active in the transfer portal. He got Bunk. He got Mingo. He got Damani Harrison. He got international players as well.
Yeah.
Ayenga.
Who are you thinking of?
I was thinking Raul Villar.
Yeah.
Raul Villar from Spain. Yep.
From Spain. Raul Villar cleared all of his, he played for FC Barcelona's developmental team. Mm-hmm. He cleared all the stages for that, and Ayenga played for the Belgium national team.
Yep. You
went out and got your players, and somehow it's just not working out. This team, I believe talent-wise, has it. It's just the coaching is not there. I genuinely believe he believes in his players, and he's pretty hard on them based on when I've talked to him in press conferences.
Yeah.
He's hard on them. He coaches them, but it's just not enough. I think you need a separate look. And he spent a lot of money NIL wise this offseason.
I feel like I agree. I'm sorry if I interrupted you,
No,
but
you're
I
good.
feel like even like stats wise, I mean, Charlotte's pretty competitive. I feel like I've been out of my basketball years for quite some time, so I can't sit here and coach the team like Fern does. But that's not to say that the stats doesn't show quite the bit of girth. Like, not girth. It shows a bit of, I'm bagging, but it shows quite a bit of just push. And we've looked good. We've looked great in the American. We just can't finish these last second games.
Yeah, I mean, definitely this was a team that was tied and for a brief moment was first overall in the American Conference.
Yeah,
just before Charlotte
definitely
got a foot of snow. And it felt like Charlotte as a basketball city in general with the men's, team here and obviously the Hornets was turning in the right direction. But now it seems like it's gone back to the old 49er way.
We had a strong January.
We did.
We had a strong January.
The entire
I think
city
we
had a
took it for
strong
granted.
January for
I agree.
basketball. And we got a foot of snow and everything went off the rails. Now, guys, let me ask you this. Do we feel that part of the reason that, there's not been wholesale changes with really any of the sports programs in the last couple months is due to not having an athletic director currently in place? I mean, obviously an interim athletic director, but not a permanent athletic director. Do we feel that these are changes that not just Fern needs to worry about, but even, Tim Albin's staff and other Charlotte teams? Do we feel like that's part of the reason why?
On the basketball front, I think Fern does need to worry for his job at this point in time.
Yeah.
When it comes to football, I think Albin is safe for now. It was his first year. His starting quarterback tore his ACL, and like the game after his best game of the season, it's just tough for that season to end that way. Albin has proven success at Ohio.
Yeah, it's proven success elsewhere. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to find a coach that wants to come here and lead. I will say, not that I again, Aaron Fern, if you're watching this, I got your back. But what I do worry about a little bit, obviously, is the transfer portal of it all and the NIL of it all with college sports in general. We talked about this a couple weeks ago on here, me and Blake did, about the fact that you almost don't want to perform too good. If you perform too good as a mid-major, you risk losing a lot of your players. You risk losing a lot of people that are, crucial to your success. I brought up the fact of North Texas football, and I sat there in the press box with Evan watching that game. And Drew Mestemaker, their quarterback, was lights out, and he goes and transfers to Oklahoma State in the offseason, right? So that's the culture we're in now, where players are going to, let me rephrase that, programs are going to be punished for players being too good. I felt Charlotte was at a place just a couple weeks ago where they were good, but not great to where you have to worry about players leaving. Now, if you go into a coaching change, if you go into a regime change with this program, you're going to risk losing a lot of guys that are there for that reason. And it's also, you don't know that Fern and the staff, if they're back next year, are going to have the same roster as well. I mean, guys can leave and go find money elsewhere, go find initiatives elsewhere, and Charlotte is not a particularly rich school in NIL programs, being that we're a young school and don't have a lot of big donors that want to come in and spend oodles of money like we see, the Michigans and the Alabamas and everybody else of the world, right? But it's, I think you're whoever takes over this AD job, whenever that is done, I believe Chancellor Garber said that they were looking to hire somebody in mid-March, which would be at the end of the basketball season, assuming we don't go on some run, win the American Conference, and make it to the big dance. But
March Madness would be nice.
yeah, it'd be legendary. I mentioned earlier this week that it's the 49th anniversary of our Final Four team, which most people would say, well, Spencer, don't you want to wait for the 50th anniversary? We're the 49ers, so 49th anniversary is kind of cool. So wild things have happened here, obviously. But, guys, let me ask you, where I was trying to go with that, obviously, is do we feel like no matter who comes in to take over this coaching job, this roster is going to be completely different next year? Is that a vibe you get from a mid-major program like Charlotte in a conference like the American? Where
I think I see it.
Yeah.
I think I see it being completely different, and I'm not really sure who would be able to step up next year and come here. And I think my biggest scare is Bunk. Can we talk about him for a second?
Yeah. He has gained some traction on Twitter
He's getting
which
crazy traction on Twitter.
is a bad
Clap it up,
sign
clap
for
it up.
Charlotte.
Oh.
What?
I'm happy for him.
I was happy for him.
I'm happy for him.
I see him walking around.
It is a bad
worried,
sign for
I
Charlotte.
haven't seen him on
It's
campus.
a bad sign for
I saw
Charlotte
him,
because
walking out of the dining hall the other day.
Oh, really?
He's so tall. I'm like, oh my
yeah,
God,
I remember
guy's
being at the
protein.
first game, and the first time I saw him there, like the first question that everybody has was like, "Who is this 7-footer?"
Yeah.
And then a couple months later, the Twitter traction gained up, and they said Charlotte has a 7-footer. I agree with you about next year. Where would he be?
Does it worry you that he has gained some notoriety online, that it's going to not, I don't mean this to slander Anton Bonk as a person, obviously we don't know him personally, but does it make you scared that he's going to see the attention and people are going to call him, and what stops a Big Ten school or a Big East or ACC school from calling him and saying, hey, we have a spot for you, it might be in the rotation, you might not be a starter, but you're going to get a lot of minutes. Do you want to come here and play? What's going to stop a school like that from reaching out to him and
I
give him a
have
call?
an answer, but I want to hear yours.
I personally think, as a player, as someone that's from overseas, that is just newly started getting into basketball, development-wise, he's developed a lot here. As a person, like if I was him, if Carolina came down and said, we have a spot for you on our roster, that's a big school. Personally, I would go, but I think one thing that you could point to and say he maybe would stay here, he is from Oceania, in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Fern is from Australia.
Yeah.
So maybe he has a close relationship with Fern, and Fern is developing him in a way, and maybe he trusts in that. That's my only saving grace. I personally think that I think Dzane Mingo, I think if he's not starting at some point this year, he's going to transfer this offseason. I don't think it's fair that he's still on the bench. I understand during the tournament in Hawaii, there were some body language issues. Obviously, Fern doesn't respond well to that. That's why he's on the bench. But I feel like he's earned his way back into a starting role because he is just that talented. Yeah. During our January strong run, he basically, for most of the games I went to, he was controlling the pace and the fast break. And he finishes. He's a very technical player. He can run the pick and roll really well. And defensively, he's not a slouch. He'll pick it up. He'll move his feet. Yeah. And I think when there's a vast difference when he's on and off the floor. And I just think if you're not going to start Mingo, you're going to lose him this offseason because he will transfer to a school.
I feel like we saw that last year with Jay Sean Thompson. Honestly, I know I've ran into him a couple of times. And if I remember correctly, he was starting.
Yeah. For majority of the year, wasn't it? Yeah. But last year's program didn't how do I say it? Didn't live up to expectations of the year prior. You saw Fern take over in basically an interim role for much of the offseason and then become the permanent head coach and, basically drive that program into what was a decent regular season in the American Conference, just a sad exit in the conference championship or conference tournament. So, guys, this is a question me and Blake have discussed multiple times on here. What I fear, and we talked about this with football, we've talked about it with basketball a little bit, but what is a 49er? What makes a player want to come to Charlotte? What makes a player say, yeah, Charlotte being a 49er, this is where I want to go? What does that for a player? Because I've discussed it with Blake and eagle-eyed listeners might remember it, but I said basically that Charlotte is, the programs here are just like the city itself, where it's full of new, flashy things that don't really excite me, right? Charlotte as a city, Justin's a Charlotte guy, I'm a Raleigh guy.
Born and raised.
It's full of condos and new buildings and
I agree.
Bright signs that, they look cool, but what is really underneath all that, right? So I fear that Charlotte's sports program, especially looking at the Evergreen project, we're going to renovate most, if not all, of the athletic facilities. And, they're already starting on football construction for the new additions to Jerry Richardson Stadium. I fear that Charlotte sports as a whole have gotten to this point where it looks cool. It's a D1 program. It's in what used to be called the Power 6 conference in football. It's not a bad conference by any means, but what does it really do? What is it effective at? What is it efficient at? And is there a life for this school that revolves, I guess, around the culture itself, or do we have to find some other way to succeed?
So your question is basically saying, what would make people want to come here?
Yeah.
Almost like saying, like the drag to Alabama, people want to go there to play football. People want to go to Chapel Hill to play basketball. People want to go to all these different places because they have a rich history. And I think that's something that Charlotte might be missing. But where does the history start, if not from now? Can we agree?
Yeah. I think there has to be something good has to happen. As I think we get a little too doomer on this show. I know you guys haven't been on here before, but this show often devolves into what's the point? Why do we try? Are we going to come back to games when we graduate? Blah, 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 all this stuff where it's kind of pessimistic, but it has to start at some point. What do we think? Where does this start? I mean, you can be a baseball school. Being a baseball school is awesome, but that with a culture only really helps baseball. If you're a football school, you can succeed in other things. If you're a basketball school, you can succeed in other things. I mean, UNC, for whatever you want to call it, has had not a terrible time in football over the last 15 years. I mean, had bad stretches and good stretches, and they've had, 2 top 5 draft pick quarterbacks, and one just went to the Super Bowl. But they're a basketball school. But their football team has been able to, prove a point